Yesterday, you read this story called The Ship of the Desert, and you practiced answering test questions about the story. So, you should have in front of you your notebook or your notebook paper with all of your answers on it. You're going to check your work today as we're going over the answers and see which ones you got right and which ones you got wrong. So you've already read the story. I'm not going to read it again to you. Let's dive right into the questions. All right. This question has two parts. First answer part A, then answer part B. Read the sentences from the passage. He carried food and water on his back. He lugged his heavy tent on the ground behind him, dragging it across the sand. What does the word lugged mean? So we have bounced, kicked, pulled, or smashed. So what if we put these words in that spot? He bounced his heavy tent on the ground behind him, dragging it across the sand. Well, if you're bouncing it and it's heavy, that wouldn't make sense. You can't really bounce it if you have to drag it, so A does not make sense. Kicked. He kicked his heavy tent on the ground behind him, dragging it on the sand. Well, if you're kicking something, you're not dragging it. And if it's heavy, you're definitely not kicking it. He pulled his heavy tent on the ground behind him, dragging it across the sand. Pulling it would make sense if it's heavy. He smashed his heavy tent on the ground behind him, dragging it across the sand. If you're smashing it, you're not really dragging it. So pulled makes the most sense here. So your answer for number 6A is C. Part B, which word from the sentence helps you understand what lugged means? Food and water, heavy tent, behind him, or dragging it? Well, it doesn't really say anything about food and water. Well, the first sentence does, but this sentence does not say anything about food and water. Heavy tent, okay, that could help us, knowing that it's heavy and he's lugging it. Behind him, I think you can pull something from behind or from the front, really. You can pull it towards you. Dragging it, that would make the most sense. We really were looking at that word dragging as we were talking about the answer. So check your work. Make sure for number 6 you have C and D. If not, figure out where you went wrong. How does the sequence of events help you understand the passage? Pick 2 choices. Okay. The story is organized so that each day the man has a different thought. Well, going back to the story, each day the man has a different thought. Okay, the next day, the third day, the fourth day. Okay, this would make sense, right? Organized so that each day he has a different thought. That makes sense. It shows the man wants to ride the camel on the first day. Let's go back to the first day. Suddenly he saw a strange creature ahead of him. It was a large, brown, and hairy. The creature bellowed at him, and the loud noise frightened him. The man rushed away. He ran as fast as he could, even with his heavy load. He's running away. So that doesn't really show that he wants to ride the camel. The man slowly gains knowledge by the end of the story. Well, I remember the man was watching. He was learning more about him, about the camels. So that would make sense, yeah. Oops. The camel refuses to help the man on the third day. Okay, on the third day, the man saw more and more of these odd creatures. He decided to observe them carefully to see what he could learn. They ate plants and drank water for long periods of time. Sometimes one would look up and stare straight at him. Another might even bellow like the first creature he saw. But the man realized that the stares and bellows from the creatures were not mean. The creatures were actually meek and gentle. The man watched some creatures coming over a high sand dune. He knew the desert extended for miles and miles past that dune. These creatures must be able to walk in the desert without water for a long time, he thought. Well, I'm not seeing the camel refusing to help the man at all on that third day. The last day shows how the man learns nothing about the animal. It seems like he's really learning a lot about the animal because he's really watching. He's seeing that they're able to walk without water for a long time. He sees that they're not mean. So I wouldn't say that he learned nothing. So we've eliminated answers, and there's our two choices that were left. Read the sentence from the passage. It was down in the sand with its eyes closed, dozing. What does dozing mean in the sentence above? So he's down in the sand, digging, drinking, eating, or sleeping. His eyes are closed. Could he be digging? Probably not with his eyes closed. Drinking? He's down in the sand. Do you drink from the sand? No. Eating? Again, he's down in the sand and his eyes are closed. Could he be sleeping? Well, yeah, if he's down and his eyes are closed, dozing probably means sleeping. So check your answer for number 8. You should have D. What happens after the man rides the creature all the way home? So let's see. His children greet him excitedly. The creature falls asleep in the sand. The creature bellows at the man and frightens him. Or he watches some creatures walk over a high sand dune. So after he rides the creature all the way home. Okay, so here's where he rides it all the way home. His children greeted him excitedly. So there's my answer right there in the text. I found the text evidence that answers the question. So for number 9, you should have A. Put the events of the passage in the correct order by numbering them from 1 to 5. Write the correct number in front of each event. So the man rides the animal all the way home. That happens towards the end. The man walks through the desert to return to his family. Well, I see in paragraph 1, the man was returning to his family far away. So really, that's the first thing that happens. The man sees a creature that scares him. The man realizes the animals don't need water for a long time. Or the man watches these animals and learns about them. Well, he can't realize and learn about them until he sees them. So that is what happened next. Then he starts to watch them. And then that's when he realizes they don't need water for a long time. And then at the very end, you remember, that's when he rode it all the way home. So you should have 5, 1, 2, 4, and 3. So check your work. You're going to be answering a discussion question about your test-taking strategies that you learned about this week. So think about how well you did on this practice test, and think about the strategies that you used. You're going to be telling me about them in your discussion today.